So then, if you just have a person who is a good Christian wanting to help their friend, and they're not out there to pick fights. What do you think are kind of the general guidelines of approaching just any type of either alleged Bible contradiction or any objection that they have to Bible, the problem of evil, or veins in giraffe's neck being twisted one way or the other, which Dawkins seems to really be harping on for showing that God doesn't exist. What do you think the kind of the general guidelines? Do you break things down logically? What would you suggest is a general approach?
I don't have a formula really. I kind of I try to feel where the person's at. Is this person? Some people, I can tell that on some level they really do want to be a Christian. And they feel like they can't because there's these scientific things that just don't make sense of the Bible. And people like that, I feel I'm able to help them the most because I can say, well, let's talk about some of the specifics of this. I'm a scientist. I'd be happy to talk about some of the details of this. There are other folks that are actively antagonistic to God, and I point that out to them. I say, your problem really isn't intellectual at all because I could answer your intellectual issues. That's not the problem. You hate God. That's the problem. And I'm not afraid to tell people that. I'm not afraid to say, look, you don't want to believe in God. That's your issue. And a lot of times, what? The funny thing is a lot of times they'll say, well, yeah, that's true. They'll actually agree with me. They'll say, that's right. And then they'll give me their story as to why they hate God. Mm-hmm. And I say, well, that shows you believe in him. You don't hate what you don't believe in. So you do know God exists. So, right. And just kind of talk them through. It's a conversation. It's not a sermon. It's a conversation with folks trying to feel out where they're at. What is the stumbling block? Why is this person rejecting the God who can save them? Right. That's kind of what I'm thinking of when I have any conversation with folks. And it just depends. And there's some people that they've hardened their heart, and I don't really feel like I'm going to get anywhere with them. And usually I don't spend a lot of time on those people. The Bible doesn't say that you have to answer everyone. It says you need to be ready to give an answer. And so there are situations where it's a pearls before swine situation where I know I'm not going to make any headway. And the only time I would make an exception and reason with those people if somebody else is watching and they can benefit from it. And I can show that this person is being irrational and absurd, because that might have a positive influence on someone else who's watching. They'll say, boy, that Christian knew what he was talking about. That atheist, I could tell he just had an axe to grind. But that's the only time I would do that. So there's a time to engage in a conversation and a time to walk away and say, I've got better things to do.
Yeah. I think even I've changed my approach in witnessing to people, and if they're receptive to it, Tony and I talk about how the moral argument seems to be kind of the most impactful one, because you can kind of try to explain away, or people aren't as scientifically acumen as or logically acumen as they are to kind of their feelings of right and wrong, and obviously Romans talks about that as well, of why that's the case, and so just pointing them to the fact that without an objective standard to point back to, it seems difficult to call things good or bad, and it's been fairly receptive. And I think too, that's one of those things where you're called to plant, and God provides the flourishment, and it's only afterwards that I think that I've had people come back to me and go, I was thinking about that, and that's interesting when it comes to kind of that approach of, well, great, now I can't apply to Stalin was a really bad guy. Well, okay, just in your opinion, right? Because he was doing what was best for breaking communism out of the capitalistic swine stranglehold. So yeah, it's been just absolutely fascinating to kind of being on this journey, especially with Tony, and struggling with it at times, because as you mentioned too, when you talk about the circularity problem, which Ultimate Proof does a really good job of pointing to that fact. I think it was one of those chapters that I had to read a couple times to go, yeah, I mean, I get what he's saying, but I don't think that's right, and then go back to it and like, yeah, no, I think he's right on this, and so we have another conversation on it. So it's just been great to read.